Hello, I'm Jane Turner from writewithjane.com. And recently I had a really interesting conversation with Jane Monica Jones, who is the author of The Billionaire Buddha. And this is just a little bit of background to that conversation that you'll be seeing in about 10 minutes' time. So I went to an event where Jane was talking, and the subject she was talking on was the neuroscience of spending. Now, that's an absolutely fascinating topic in and of itself. But little did I know that by going along to that event, it was really going to open up some of the stuck emotions that I'd been holding in my body for decades, literally since childhood. Now, the thing is that Jane did a demonstration on the evening when I saw her with one of the volunteers from the audience, and she was showing her somatic approach to helping people to unearth any of their limiting beliefs around money and to get to the bottom of what might actually be going on for them. Now, even though I wasn't actually the person who was helping Jane to demonstrate her process, I happened to be sitting there processing my own stuff nonetheless. And I hadn't planned to do that. I had just gone along to hear somebody speak. And a whole lot of things started emerging and slowly becoming clearer to me. So what you'll see now is a little bit of a mashup from the initial authors in conversation session that I had with Jane. So A, I hope it makes sense. And B, I hope that if you're in any place of stuckness, whether it's around money or not, really, to be honest, the subject matter is not as important as what we do in the way of interpreting the things that we hear as we grow up and as we move through our life. So just sit back and have a look at this and see what happens. So the background to this image is that I was the youngest in a family of 5 children, and my older sister was 15 years older than me. Then there were 2 brothers who came in quick succession. So my parents had 3 kids under the age of 3. And then my sister Debbie came along 6 years later, and I came along 6 years after Debbie. So what was going on in this image that you're looking at now is that I was sitting there waiting for the other kids to come home from school. And in the case of my older sister, she was already out at work, so she came home later anyway. But it was the 3 who were at school that I was just waiting for. And I honestly don't know how long I was sitting there on that rock by myself, but I feel like it was a very long time. And I'm pretty sure I did it every day now that I'm reflecting back on a memory that I didn't consciously have when I was sitting at the event listening to Jane, where this part of the pain that I was holding started to get ready to emerge. And the really strange thing about this is that this image was sitting in a photo album at the top of my wardrobe for years and years and years. And the fact that I chose to reach up and pull the photo album down on the day that I was going to be talking to Jane about her book and financial therapy and what she does just made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. And the thing that this evocative image brought up for me was that sense of aloneness. It was the very sense that I experienced when I was sitting at the table listening to Jane. And it's obviously that sense that's been there for a very, very long time. Because in fact, what I found out at the age of 45 when I was doing my NLP training is that I was the surviving twin in a case of vanishing twin syndrome. And boy, did that piece of the puzzle and the fact that I was essentially traumatized in the womb put into perspective the ability that I developed before I was even born to shut off my emotions. And there were some really toxic patterns that I used to keep my emotions away. And why I'm such a fan of what Jane does is that she opened the door to me exploring what was behind that very deep sense of being alone. So what I'm going to do now is go back to what Jane had to say about this part of my story.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's that existential piece, isn't it? We're talking about the existential part of us that is deeply wants connection. I mean, I'm just completely delighted that you've shared this, because I think it really poignantly illustrates where we often go around money. And that is that if I have this bauble, then I can have social connection. And we long for that. We are very much part of the mammalian, animal, and we need social connection. And our whole system, our whole nervous system is very much like that. We have the limbic system, which is part of the mammalian thing, that we do better in herds. And to be alone is like death. And essentially it is, in a way, because that's in the early stages, that if we are left alone, we don't thrive. So what we often use money for is a way to get social connection. That if I have the right career, that if I have the right house, that if I have something that I can share with others, then I won't be so existentially alone. And this is where we often go around money, rather than feeling that, can I be with alone? Because to be with alone, we were often alone, even being alone. So we don't want to go there, you know? It reminds me of when this nervous system was not developed and incapable to be with those heavy experiences when we were a child. So what happens is that when we had emotions as a child, it was so overwhelming. And we have an echo and memory of that overwhelm. So you know what? I don't want to feel it. It's too painful, because I was alone in feeling those experiences, whether it was anger, loneliness, frustration, sadness, grief, whatever it is. Now, in an undeveloped nervous system as a child, it's too much. And we have an echo of that. But what happens is, as an adult, we've been so programmed not to feel it. So we just go into our head, we just go, that's it. I'll try and figure out life from here. But what happens, as you rightly said, is that when we don't have that sadness, we can't have access to great joy. If we don't have anger, we also don't have compassion and boundaries and strength, in a way, So when we shut down our emotional life, we shut down the richness of life. And then we start seeking it in the outer. Oh, if I just have the right car, if I can have a house that's perfectly ordered, I'll feel safe. And this is what we seek in money, that if I can have the right shoes, then I will be confident enough to be able to continue and pay my mortgage in the long term, whatever it is, So it's a deeply, deeply profound lens that we can look at who we are, because it's not about money, it's about survival.
Gosh.
And it is all about survival. It's not, am I going to survive if I leave this job? Am I going to survive if I stay in this job? Am I going to survive if I take on this mortgage and it might feel really restrictive? Or am I going to survive if I have more freedom and not be so restricted? So everything becomes part of this lens. But of course, we sit with that inner peace, that peace that cannot be filled with the outer experience, and that is that deeper existential longing. As a child, it was too painful to feel the longing. But as an adult, it can be part of our guidance system. What do I long for? I long for connection. I long to feel safe. I long to feel secure. And how am I using money as an instrument to either not feel that or try and satisfy that?
Yes.
So
wow.
that this is the territory. And if we choose to take it on, it's very exciting for us. That, you can get to a stage where, it doesn't matter what's happening in my financial life. I have myself now in a way that I never had before. Or I've got my back now in a way that I've never had before. And this is the gift of looking at our issues with money in a way that actually the fear of it becomes so diminished, that we actually can start seeing ourselves, look how I've been driven in this way and how much it's driven me and I didn't even know myself. So yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Jane. That's just
well,
wonderful.
I can't thank you enough, Jane. And now, is the Billionaire Buddha, that's still available on places
Yeah,
like Amazon and what have you?
absolutely.
And where can people contact you, Jane?
So JaneMonicaJones.com is an easy way to, if you wanted to come and work with me. But I also have a company, an organization called the Financial Wellbeing Company. Well, we want to get as many people as possible access to deeper, not just the financial education and literacy, but also the financial psychology and behavior change. And that's what we lead in this space.
Fantastic. Oh, it is so good to have met you, to have had this conversation with you, and I'm on my journey. I may well be knocking on your door sometime soon.
Great. Thanks, Jane. Thanks for having me.